We're really happy to have Dr. Emily Grossman talk with us today. In case you don't know much about her, she's an internationally acclaimed science author, public speaker and TV personality with a degree in natural sciences from Cambridge University and a PhD in cancer research. She's best known as a science expert on several TV shows and for her inspirational talks in schools, universities and at live events. A passionate advocate for equality and diversity in science, Emily has delivered a TEDx talk on why science needs people who cry, and she was recently named the second honorary STEM ambassador alongside astronaut Tim Peake for her pioneering work in STEM education and as a role model to young people.
In order to be successful, we need diverse teams. We need diverse ways of thinking, diverse ideas to bring to those environments. So the other study that often comes to mind is, you might have heard of, there was a study carried out by Hewlett-Packard, which showed that, again, it's a gendered study, which showed that if there are 10 qualities in a job description that you are given in the job description to apply for a job, that you have to meet these 10 qualities, characteristics, women will only apply if they fit all 10 of the criteria. And again, massive generalization, but that was what the study showed. Men, however, will apply if they only fit 6 of the criteria on average, and will be more likely to be given the job. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is partly because there is this sense of sometimes women, due to conditioning, feeling, or due to our backgrounds, due to what we've grown up with, feeling like we're not good enough and we can only even apply for something if we're absolutely the best, absolutely the top. And there is also a sense that we can't be honest and confident about our abilities. And I don't think either are right or wrong. You know, I don't think it's not about right or wrong. It's not about saying, well, you shouldn't apply unless you meet all 10. And it's not about saying, well, you know, there's something wrong with you if you think you should apply if you only meet 6. It's just about knowing that this is what goes on. So I finished my degree in biology, and I decided to go up to Manchester University to do a PhD in cancer research. And I joined a research laboratory. And this was, I guess, the 3rd time in my career where I again started to feel out of place. So I really loved science. I really enjoyed thinking about the research I was doing, but I found myself in an environment again that didn't really suit me. It didn't really suit the way that I learn, the way that I process information. I've couple of decades later, finally diagnosed as having high functioning autism and ADHD, which explains a lot in terms of the way that I was or wasn't supported in my research environment in terms of how I learn. I learn very experientially. I learn through through conversation. I don't learn very well through reading, and I'm not very good at learning things without writing them down, for example. So I know all of that now, but at the time I didn't know that. Plus, I felt very different because I was very into my music and my theatre, and some of them thought I was sort of a bit weird for that. And there were a lot of very focused, very competitive people in my laboratory, most of whom were women, I hasten to add. But these were women similarly who had those qualities that was, again, quite challenging for me. And again, I started to just feel that I just didn't fit in, that it wasn't for me. Now, this time, I was absolutely determined that I wanted to finish my PhD and I wanted to get to the end. So I did push on through and I finished my PhD, but I had a really, really tough time. And I found myself saying to myself things like, well, I'm just not cut out for a career in STEM. I'm not tough enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not competitive enough. I'm a bit too sensitive. I'm a bit too emotional. You know, I was constantly bursting into tears when I got stuff wrong, or I messed up an experiment, or I wasn't getting on socially very well with people in my group. And I was just taking it all really sensitively. And I thought, again, wrongly, that meant that I wasn't the right kind of person to be in a STEM profession. So again, for the 2nd time or 3rd time, actually, I decided to leave. This time, rather than leaving physics, when I got to the end of my PhD, I left science entirely. And I decided that I wanted to retrain as an actress and as a singer. So I went to drama school. I trained in musical theatre at Guildford School of Acting. And I spent the next 8 years working in plays and musicals across the UK. I say working, most of the time I was auditioning and out of work, and actually working part-time as a maths and science teacher in some local schools. And I had a great time doing that. But again, you know, a lot of the skills that I learned during my PhD of kind of resilience and like really sticking with it, and a lot of those were actually very relevant in my career as an actress. And like I said earlier, a lot of my creative side, my expressive side, I hadn't realized how much I could actually access that as a scientist. And in fact, it was starting to do teaching that helped me to kind of reframe that and to realize how creative maths and science was, because I'd sort of lost my love for it. I'd lost my joy for STEM. So eventually, after about 8 years, I left the acting profession. And honestly, I had a huge slump. I lost my confidence entirely because I'd got some great jobs, but mostly I was auditioning and getting knockbacks, and I kind of just started to feel like I didn't really fit in as a scientist. I didn't really fit in as an actress. I wasn't really good enough to kind of make it a sustainable career. Didn't really feel like I was cut out to be a teacher. And I just felt completely out of my depth. I didn't know what I wanted to do in the world. I didn't know who I wanted to be. And I had a bit of a breakdown. And I spent a couple of years in my early 30s just feeling really low, really confused and uncertain about what I wanted to do. And luckily, I was able to reach out and get some support. And that's the best thing really that I think I did with my life, is to start to talk about how I was feeling, to start to talk about the fact that I felt like I wasn't good enough, that I felt like I'd failed. And you know, I had support from friends and family, and I started to see a counsellor and a therapist. And slowly over time, I started to kind of really think, well, you know, what do I want to do in the world, and who do I want to be, and how am I going to be able to find a place where I can bring together these different aspects of my personality. And then eventually, after a couple of years, I was making a living as a tutoring maths and science. Then eventually an opportunity came along through a scheme that the BBC were running called BBC Expert Women. And it was in 2013, and they launched this scheme, and they were looking for women, particularly, who were experts in science, but also who were interested in kind of being spokespeople about science in the media. So we're interested in communication. So on paper, you would think that this was like the perfect opportunity for me, given my background. But by this point, I had so little confidence and my mental health was really poor that I just sort of hid under the duvet and was just like, well, I can't do this. But I had some quite persuasive friends who kind of basically sat me down and said, you know, you got to apply for this scheme. And what all this scheme was basically they were offering a training day at the BBC in media skills. And I was like, okay. Didn't expect in a million years to get selected to go, but I did. So the night before the training day, they sent me through the booklet of, they selected 30 women from several thousand applicants, which I was just like totally intimidated. And they sent me through the booklet, and I was reading about these women who they'd selected, who were all beautiful and highly successful scientists and physicists and engineers. And I was thinking, my God, these women are amazing. And I had so little confidence in myself. I was thinking, oh God, why am I even there? I shouldn't be going. But I went after a sleepless night. And when we got into the training room, the woman who was running the course at the BBC, she stood up in front of us and she said, right, there's 30 of you here. We've invited you all to come. But I bet every single one of you thinks you're the one who shouldn't be here. And we all sort of felt a little bit uncomfortable. And I kind of was like, how does she know? And I sort of looked around, and everybody was sort of looking around at each other and looking a bit embarrassed. And then we all started to laugh. And I was like, oh my God. And that was the moment that the penny dropped. I was like, everyone feels like this? And she was like, yes, we've invited you here today, yes, to give you a bit of media training, but mostly we've invited you to give you some confidence. Because they said, actually, this is a thing. The woman said, this is a thing. This thing that you're all feeling right now, it has a name. And of course, I'm sure you all know what the name is, the title of this talk, Imposter Syndrome. This idea that at any moment someone's going to walk up behind you and tap you on the shoulder and go, really? I know you. I've got your number. I know you shouldn't really be here. I know that you're just snuck in the back door, or you've had a lucky break, or you fluked your way through the exams. You're going to get found out. We're going to find out that you don't really know what you're doing. Anyone identify with that feeling? Again, say a little hello in the chat box if you will. I can't see any of your videos, so I can't see if any of you will wave. Oh, thank you, Daniel. Lovely that a man, I'm assuming a man, forgive me if not, has been the first to say yes. I'm so delighted, because it's so important that we realise that this is something that affects everybody of all genders, that this isn't just women. This is something that a lot of women speak about, because women have been more socially conditioned to be allowed to say that they're feeling confident or lacking in confidence. But absolutely, this is a lot of, look how many men are saying yes, thank you for your courage, everybody who's acknowledging this. So it's so important that we start talking about this, because we're all feeling it and we're all bottling it up, and we're all thinking that everybody else doesn't feel it, but everyone does. And that's what that day at the BBC taught me. You know, forget the contacts it gave me or the opportunities that came as a result, which actually were largely self-made, in the sense that I went off and pursued opportunities from it and made that happen. But what that day taught me, finally, after decades of suffering with this, was that this wasn't something that I should allow to control me. This feeling was something I need to just try and push through and not allow it to stop me. So from that day, I decided, right, this sounds like a really exciting thing, talking about science in the media, or, this is something actually that I could really, really love doing. So I went up to the person running the course at the end of the training course, and I was like, right, okay, I want to do this as my job. How do I do this? And she was like, oh, well, that's not really a job. Go back to your day job. Don't call us, we'll call you. But if we do call you, please say yes. And I was like, oh, but I want to do this as a job. And they'd also told us, incidentally, that one of the other reasons that they got us there in terms of confidence is they said, just so you know, you're not alone in this. And again, forgive me, it's gendered, but that's because that's usually how it more openly manifests, but certainly it manifests in men just as much, but just fewer tend to admit it. But generally, the BBC said that if they want a STEM professional to comment on a news story, or to basically be like a talking head on a news report, an expert to comment on something, they will have to phone, if they want a woman, they will have to phone 6 women before one will say yes. Now that was 7 years ago now, so hopefully things have changed somewhat, but that's a lot. They said the other women will tend to say, oh, it's not my field. Oh, I'm not expert enough. I'm not the head of the field. I didn't win a Nobel Prize. I'm not the professor. You should ask this person. You should ask my boss. You should ask the man down the corridor. You should ask my husband. That's what most women will say historically. By the by, they said that if they want anyone to speak on a STEM subject, they will phone a man and he will always say yes, even if it's not his field.